Building a family can be a complicated, messy, lonely, and sometimes heartbreaking process. But you don't have to navigate this challenging journey alone.
Welcome to the All Paths podcast, where we support and celebrate all of the different ways there are to grow your family. We are your hosts, Kate and Emily from the nonprofit organization All Paths Family Building. And today we're talking with our dear friend Matt about his journey and his family. Matt, thank you for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here.
Thank you. So before we get into talking about your family in more detail, we'd love for you to briefly introduce yourself to our listeners.
Sure. My name is Matt Smith, and I am the owner and founder of Wandering Soul Beer Company, based in Beverly, Massachusetts. I'm originally from New Jersey. I moved up to Massachusetts a little over 15 years ago, I think, to play in a band. That didn't take shape the way any of us thought it would. So, I got a job doing other things and eventually stumbled into the craft beer world, where I've been working, in this industry for 15 years. And I live in Beverly with my wife and my two daughters, Willow and Maya. And that's a little bit about me.
Wonderful. Thank you. So let's jump in. Where did your journey to starting a family begin?
Well, Abby and I bought a house in Beverly, and have a dog named Rudy, who we still have. This was back in like 2015, 2016. And, we had been talking about, building our family and having children. And the house that we lived in at the time, which is only about a mile from where we are right now, where I'm sitting right now, it wasn't really the best for having kids, because the road that it was on is Route 1A in Beverly. So it's like a very busy road, but we had this huge backyard. So we ended up buying another house, and she was pregnant at the time. We moved into this house, and 3 weeks after we moved into this house, Abby felt like there was something wrong, and we went to get everything checked, and our daughter had died. So her name was Melody, and that was one of those moments where, because Abby was 35 and a half weeks pregnant at that time, and everything seemed fine until it wasn't. And so, after that happened, the days after that are very much a blur. But I, remember bits and pieces. It was very scary. It was very tragic, and Abby had to have an emergency surgery after Melody was delivered. And I remember being in a hospital room, and they took Abby away, and I was wondering if I'd ever see her again. So it's one of those things where it was a double whammy sort of situation, because we had found out about Melody, went through that whole process, and these are things that people don't really talk about. So I didn't even know, like that I knew that this happens to people, when we lose a child, when a baby is stillborn. I didn't know about all the stuff that happens after that. So it was very new to me. And, we came out of that experience, and Abby was, we were both very broken. And we did go on to have 2 living children after that. But it was very challenging to see Abby go through those pregnancies, to be there in a support role, and to watch her body go through what it went through. It's pretty amazing, actually, that she was able to, that we were able to have 2 living children after all that. But yeah, it definitely changed me. And it's directly tied into what I'm doing for work, with Wandering Soul. That experience is tied right into the business. So for me, there's very little division between personal and business because my main beer that I put out is called Melody Maker. It's dedicated to melody, and it's all printed on the can. That's how I got to know Kate, and Kate was really great. When we went through that, I think we were looking for resources out there for people who might be able to help us because we had family and friends trying to do anything to help. So we were given some resources, and I think I reached out to Kate, and you responded right away, and were just so kind, it felt really nice to have somebody, anybody, care and really truly want to help. And I think that's true for so many people out there. They really do want to help. There's some really good people out there, but it just feels like it's this huge mountain that you're about ready to climb to get out of the grief. And it's hard to take the first step is just so hard, when you're just feel paralyzed by grief and loss and wondering if it's going to happen again. The anxiety around subsequent pregnancies that, constantly checking for a heartbeat. I mean, we were after that happened, the pregnancy with Willow, who's 6 years old now, we had like a Doppler thing at home.
Mm-hmm.
And we were I remember we used that we had that when she was pregnant with Melody and used it a lot. And after everything that happened with Melody, that got put in a box, that Doppler thing. And, but it came out a couple times during the pregnancy with Willow until Abby's doctor said, yeah, don't use that.
Mm-hmm. It's
So
like it can be a blessing and a curse to have something like that. That's how I feel even about like a lot of the things. Video monitors, even after the baby's born, is like they can be so comforting, but they can actually add to your feeling of having to be monitoring them at all times. And it's so a lot of these things are so blurry in terms of whether they're good for you emotionally or not.
right. Yeah, it's like knowledge is power. It's good to be
Hmm.
informed and have these tools, but when you're not a doctor, trying to use something that really a doctor should be using.
Right. Could actually add to your anxiety.
Yeah, yeah. So it's you know, obviously heavy stuff, and having Wandering Soul has allowed me to process a lot of these feelings because I doing this sort of work and talking about this in the beer world,
Hmm.
I sometimes feel like an alien. I feel like like that black sheep situation where it's I'm in this world of fun and happy beer, yay, and like goofy beer labels, which is the world I came from, a brewery called Clown Shoes.
Literally goofy labels. Yeah.
Literally comic books, funny names,
Yeah.
and so to come from that world into and then try to pivot, take this experience and have it funnel through, it's been quite a trip, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just have to say that, I mean, you obviously know I'm such a fan of you personally, of Wandering Soul, of Melody Maker, of everything. But it's
Thank you.
the reason I feel that way is multi-layered because I remember obviously our conversation, our very first conversation so distinctly. And I mean, after the fact, I was glad that I helped you, but I had no idea if I had. But it resonated so much with me because I think pregnancy loss in general, we don't feel is talked about enough. Stillbirth, even less. And then the perspective of the non birthing partner is even less. So I feel like it was to me, and I mean, this feeling has only grown so much over time, but I feel so grateful that you reached out, that you knew you and Abby both together and separately needed support, and that you've continued to raise awareness of this, and particularly like the dad's perspective, because that is really not talked about very much. And even though I know it's unique and maybe makes you feel like the black sheep sometimes, the fact that it was through beer to me has never been, that has never been weird, but I know it could be isolating for you. But to me, it's like, we all try to find purpose when things like this happen. You know, one of my dearest friends lost her son to a disease called Tay-Sachs, and the instant he was diagnosed, she's a writer. She just started writing. And of course, some people are like, "Oh, you're benefiting from his illness and all these terrible things." That I
Yeah.
think some equivalent of that, I think some people have said to you as well. And it was like, to me, that was obviously the furthest from the truth. It was like, I'm going to try to make sense of this thing that really can't be made sense from
Mhm.
with the way I know how. And for you, it was beer. For my friend, it was writing. That never seemed weird to me, but I actually love that it was beer because, again, I think a lot of guys, this is not on their radar. It's not on their radar to talk about the emotional journey of a loss like this. And I mean, you have from the beginning. Will you share about how, like, I remember you sharing that, like, you walked into just like your local convenience store.
Yeah, yeah,
So I would love for you to share that story, but I think it's like people don't really think about it, but you come home from the hospital, obviously, without your baby, and you're just in your house and in your neighborhood. Like, how do I make sense of this? So, yeah, you walked
yeah.
into your convenience store and
I mean, the thing with grief, and this is really what this comes back to, because you're grieving a loss, and it changes your filter and it changes the way you respond to questions. So, like a question like, "How are you doing today?" When the first person that asked me that question was in a local, I won't say the name. Well, they know about this because I've talked to them later. Down the street, there's a market here. We were still in the hospital after this happened. I think it was the next day after Abby came out of surgery. She was there with family and stuff, and I went to the store. I had to come back and check on our dog, and I think I went to buy dog food or something. I don't even remember why I went there. And I was walking in, and someone I know who's the beer buyer there said, I've known him for years, said, "How are you doing today?" And I just I just started crying, and explained where we were in that journey. And it's kind of funny now because it's yeah, I could see this person's facial expression changing as I was talking. And we made a joke after, I think my dad or somebody made a joke of new policy at this market. Anyone asks, don't ask anyone how they're doing. Just talk about the weather. But since then, I that question, like that stuck with me, and I'm more honest these days about how I'm doing. And I think that there's this thing that we have in our culture and in this society, and especially in America, I think, where number one, we don't really know how to deal with grief. Other cultures, I think, do a better job with this because it's more communal. We live in a culture that's a little bit more isolationist, I'll call it, where you don't want to upset someone. God forbid you say something that's going to make someone sad. And this might be a generational thing, that's changing now. People are more comfortable talking about things, which is great. But, we're coming, it's for a long time, there was this thing, hey, if you're sad, brush it under the carpet, man. You know, don't make anybody else upset. Why would you do that? And to me, I was like, um, I'm just going to be honest from this point forward, and I'm not going to pretend. If I feel myself imploding, I'm gonna have to talk about that with somebody, And the platform that it became, Wandering Soul, has reached a lot of people, and I've talked about some really uncomfortable things, and that energy comes back exponentially because Kate, I mean, through us talking and all that, you linked me up with Kerry Kavanaugh on Boston 25 News, and this was shortly after everything. So Well, this was in 2019. Wandering Soul had just started. Willow was a month old, 2 months old, and Carrie's in our house interviewing Abby and I. We're holding Willow, and we're on TV the next day. And at that point, everything changed because, like, and I'm so grateful for that because as far as the business goes, which it was never, I brewed that one batch of Melody Maker, and I had no real plans beyond that beer. I had other recipes of beers I wanted to do, but I needed to make that beer. I needed to, and I had the licensing to do it, and I was like, we're doing it, And she came here and was on TV, and I had a website built, and the next day I woke up and there was this flood of people on social media, emails of people. I saw you on the news. My sister just went through this. A lot of people were very open with me about their own personal stories, not just around pregnancy loss and stillbirth, but around just grief as a whole. And it opened this door. And it's the most meaningful thing I've ever done in my life. Like, hands, it's not even close, honestly. Because this is real stuff. This is not sugar coated in any way.
It keeps giving. I mean, it's like it's been a really meaningful partnership for us, but I think you're opening that door so that others can walk through it. It just it keeps continuing, and it's so great. And one thing I'm really happy about also is that I feel like you and Abby did find emotional support after this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So can you talk about that a little bit? I know you maybe different things. I think Melody Maker and Wandering Soul was very therapeutic for you, but I
Yeah.
know also
Yeah.
like Abby found some support groups and things like that. So what were
Yeah.
like the biggest supports for you guys during that time?
We had some people come here to the house that talked with us, that were friends of friends, friends of family, and it was helpful to have people that have gone through this. That's the one thing, is going through a stillbirth situation is unique, just like any pregnancy loss is unique. Everyone has a different journey, and with stillbirth, to talk with people who had been through that was huge for us. I will say that religion kept coming up, that God, that there's a reason for this, that it's part of a bigger thing. And I couldn't really get down with that. But some of the best resources out there were, I did find a few, guys who've lost, who've gone through this and had some really honest I've met up with some of them, and some of them were through Wandering Soul. These messages like, let's meet up and grab a beer, and also Abby found this group of other moms that she's really tight with now, to the point where they text every day. I joke that, like, she'll go and check her phone, there's like 200 missed text messages, and they talk about everything. And I think she found them through it was through Facebook.
I'm so glad. Like our motto is like find your people, and I feel like Abby definitely did, which is so great. And same thing. I feel like you both of you keep giving in terms of you're willing to talk to people that are going through this. And
Yeah, the hospital was great. There was a person designated at the hospital, a team of people that stepped right in,
that's great.
nurses, because they've helped others through this, and they gave us some resources. But it felt so hard to go to some of these, meetings, and it was hard. The first
Mhm.
step is the hardest,
Mhm.
in terms of trying to get support around this stuff. And I mean, for me, the biggest thing was getting out of my own way. And I think that's true of anything in life, when it comes to mental health, getting out of your own way and taking that first step. A lot of times the biggest obstacle is yourself, actually, because um, we have all this self-talk. We have all this. You go through something like that, it's like, no one could ever understand this. No one will ever know the depths of this for me. And that's a matter of perspective. That's a very subjective thing. because there are people out there who've gone through unimaginable things and they're still around and they're changed, but they will talk to you about it. And having that comfort of knowing that you're not alone is just, then the community you guys have built is incredible. I think that it's not easy stuff to talk about, and
Yeah.
so it's
Well,
really,
thank you.
yeah.
And well, you made us so happy when you shared that you were gonna share some of the proceeds from Melody Maker with All Paths, and we're on the can, which still makes me excited every time I see it. And you
Yeah,
even changed the name on the can when we changed our name, which was
I
very
did.
cool. I would have understood if you didn't do that, but I was so excited when I saw All Paths on the can for the first time.
Yeah.
So that continues to be just such an exciting thing for us
It's,
because
yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, like, you ever sit down to like write a check or pay a bill and you're like question it, you're like paying National Grid, like,
oh yeah, I
this
definitely
doesn't
question.
feel right. But every time I sat down and written you guys a check, year after year, it's like one of the easiest, where I know where this money's going. And like, it's just it was a no-brainer for me. And plus you've had a direct impact on Wandering Soul and how this thing in the very early days was taking shape. Being on TV unexpectedly, that blew our world open in a
Well,
very
that's awesome.
in an amazing way. I mean, Carrie was just so awesome here, and she was
Yeah,
crying.
she's so
I mean,
she's so great. I mean, that's why I like media makes me like a little bit, like nervous, honestly. But I feel obviously she's on our board and she's just such a lovely human being that like I felt comfortable referring her to you. And I mean, I just in general want to believe that like we put good out into the world, and I feel like good begets good. And that was one of
yeah,
those situations where because it's not like I pushed her to cover you, it's just such a compelling story. And so it just was great. I'm glad. But
it hasn't been easy, that's for sure. And
uh,
it was important for me to, with Wandering Soul, I'm a bit of a control freak. um, it was important for me to like do everything. um, and lifting the kegs myself, delivering to the restaurants, and going into the underbelly of some of these places in Boston. I'm like, what am I doing here? Um, they see the guy coming in, they see the Budweiser guys come in and deliver a keg like it's nothing. Right down the stairs, here you go, here's the invoice. Then they see me, you know, lifting a keg into like a beer chute that goes down into the basement, and I'm with the keg like riding down the chute. This actually happened in Beverly. I delivered a keg. I didn't know what I was. I've never delivered beer like that. I've never delivered 160-pound kegs.
oh my
And
God.
it happened at the Indo here in Beverly. There was the girl was down there. There's a beer chute, like a slide, and I put the keg on and took a ride down. And she, at the end, she's like, "I've never seen anyone do that before." And but it was important for me to just experience this, and I try to document everything I'm doing, like on social media. Like if I'm delivering, I want this to be a running dialogue, and just even to remind myself, like, look at all these experiences that are now, it's like a catalog, and it's all coming back to Melody and my life. And I think it's important for people that have gone through this sort of thing to try to find some sense of community and others out there, even though when it seems impossible. And by the way, anyone can reach out to me for what that's worth. But also to take some, think of your world before this thing happened, right? And yet you're a different person back then, right? But there are fragments of things of your world that you can carry into this new person that you've become, because grief will change you. And I'm not saying that as a positive or negative. I'm just saying it's a reality. Grief will change you. But the fragments that you can take and apply that experience to anything in your life, it could be as simple as there was a rock in your backyard that existed before and after that experience. Take that rock and paint it, dedicate it, have a ritual around it, light a candle. Yeah, I mean, and it's so healing. It really is. And it sounds cliche, to talk about ritual and stuff, but with grief, it's just so important.
Well,
Yeah.
that's another thing that I think is something that even on social media, which is just unfortunately unfortunately or fortunately, such a way we all stay connected, is I think you've helped people see that grief is not linear and it isn't like it doesn't follow these prescribed things. Some people think as soon as you have living children, you're just so much better. And I don't think anyone, I hope, believes that like it fully erases a previous loss. But there are people that just want you to move on. I mean, partly for your sake, but partly for theirs. And it's like, you can move on and be very much still grieving Melody forever and remembering her and honoring her. And so I think you've helped people see that grief continues, because so many people like tell you that it's just like the first year is hard. And so then after 1 year, people are like, I'm not like magically all better now. Is there something wrong with me? And it's like, no, there's something wrong with the person that made it seem like everything was going to be fine in a year.
Right.
So I think it's great how you share that it's been, however many years now, and it is still very much there for sure.
Yeah. I mean, this year it'll be 8 years that
Right.
Melody would have been 8 years old.
Mm.
And we talk about her to our kids, and some
Yeah.
people I think have there's different opinions on this, but her urn is right behind me. It's up, and it hasn't left that spot. It's on you walk into this house, it's on a mantle up there. I don't know if you can see it, but I could show you if you'd like.
Yeah.
Um, it's up there, and it's you walk into this house, and I know it's there. Abby knows it's there, and anyone who's never been to this house might not know, and that's fine. But it's I think it's important to talk about her, and I'm doing everything I possibly can to make sure her name never gets lost. Um, and our kids don't really fully understand. It's
It'll evolve.
Yeah, we do talk about her. They know that they had a sister, Melody, and she died. I mean, they know that. And whether or not, that was a personal thing where Abby and I decided, like, hey, we do want to talk about this with them, when and but we don't go into a lot of details. They just know.
Mm-hmm.
Some other families might not choose to do that, and I get that. But the reality is that she's just as much a part of this family as they are. So
And you're doing so much to normalize these conversations and that idea of like communal grief that you were talking about, not just with kind of this generation, like the people who are going to pick up a six pack and say like, oh,
yeah.
like there's a lot of text on this label. Let's like figure out what's going on. And, they might not ever reach out, but that you might have helped them in their own experience. But you're raising a generation of girls that are going to have that expectation going forward, that like when things are hard, we talk about them. We can't keep bad things from happening, but we can process them together. It's not this isolated, you turtle up and inside and try to handle it on your own. Like, no, it's okay to talk about hard things.
Yeah, and also I wouldn't want them to be, a teenager and then have this come up as a surprise. Like
Mm-hmm.
we had a sister. Um, I don't really, I don't know. For me that just seems, I can't imagine really doing it that way. But there's many people that probably do, and that's fine. I mean, this is just again a very personal thing. But yeah, I mean, sometimes I look at our kids and I'm just like, it is such a miracle, just bringing a child into this world. If I would have known what that would take, um, but the fact that they're here now, that's obviously very healing when they were born. Um, but these are things that people go through. Right now, there are people probably in this town that are dealing with these things right now. I'm sure. So, it's this is a shared human experience. This is a very human thing. and not just human. Look at any living creature deals with grief or deals with loss, at least, you know what I mean? And it's part of life, you know, and so it's you know, it really opened up I'm just such a different person now after all that. And sometimes I think for better and sometimes for worse. I mean, you know, I was never quite wired the right way anyway. You have to be a little off kilter to do this. My friend Charlie wrote a book. He's a brewer. He wrote a book called Craft Brewing May Not Be for You. And it's just like all these weird, crazy things that have happened to him. And that's cool too, because I've met a lot of people in the beer world that I'm beer friends with, and we talk beer, analyze it, and collaborate on recipes. And then there's people I've met in the beer world who the beer was secondary. You know, the story came first, because it hit them. And the fact that it was a beer, it could have been anything. But the meaning behind it is the reason I'm close with some of these people. So for me, just staying silent on this stuff was not an option. And I had to have a very real conversation with myself after that happened. And after Abby and I were just here in this house, we had just moved in, stuff in boxes, we had a nursery, all of it. And I had to have a real conversation with myself about like, you can handle this a number of ways. You know, you can choose to implode internally and just internal combustion, or you can choose to try to take this experience and do something with it. And I felt like I had nothing to lose at that point, so, I just can't believe that this is continuing. I mean, 6 something years of doing this now, and it's amazing. It really is.
So as we kind of start to wrap up the conversation, we have a couple of questions that we like to ask all of our guests. So I'll say what they are, and then you can pick whatever order you want to say them in. Although I feel like you kind of already answered one, not to go on a tangent, but thank you so much for bringing up the religious response that you sometimes get, because like, great, if that works for you, awesome. If that gives you peace, healing, you do you. But no one should ever look at a parent or anyone who is grieving and say it's all a part of God's plan or everything happens for a reason.
What reason is it? What reason could it be?
What fucking reason is there that my child died?
Right.
Like,
no,
come on.
right.
Yeah. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So like if that works for you, keep that as an inside thought for when you're processing your own experiences, but never say that out loud to someone else.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That is like a hill I will die on. So thank you so much for bringing it up.
100%.
Yeah.
I'm surprised no one has mentioned that yet on our podcast.
Interesting. Wow.
I'm going to have to be the one who's like bringing it up someday.
I'll take it a step further real quick. That whole everything happens for a reason. Abby, my wife, came up with this, but I put out a beer called Everything Happens, period.
Mm-hmm.
And it was
Love it.
and that was a nod to the everything happens for a reason.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
Everything happens.
Yeah.
Leave it at that. I mean, and yeah, the religious aspect, I agree. If that works for some people, find what works for you. I'm all about that. Mm-hmm. But trying to tell someone that this was God's way, or
it's horrible.
It's just, I mean,
that's why, like, I don't even like when people give credit to God when something good happens, because then I'm like, well, what about the person that something bad happens? Does God not like me? Right. It's just like, I'm like, that's fine if that's the way you think of it, but then the alternative is not good. Yeah.
No, you say that to like make yourself feel like a good person, mm-hmm. when the impact that you're having is the complete opposite.
Right.
But thank you. I will get off my soapbox now, but thank you for bringing that up. So back to the original. So here are the 2 questions. And like I said, you can answer them in whatever order you'd like. So first is, what is one thing that you would say to someone who is just starting to grow their family? And the flip side is, what is one thing that you wish people would never say when someone is going through family building struggles?
Yeah. So for I'll go in order there. For the first one, someone who's trying to start a family. I would say that, you know, try to remember that families come in all shapes and sizes. The path that you might take to trying to start a family might not be what you expected. But there are, I believe in that, if your willpower is strong enough, if this is something you really want to do, there are all different ways. I mean, we talked about surrogacy because we reached a point where after Melody, where Abby had special surgery, C-section, and no one was really sure if, especially she and I, like if she could go through another pregnancy, mentally or physically. So, that conversation came up about surrogacy and I think that just remember that families just come in all different shapes and sizes, and the some people get pregnant right away. Some people it takes years. Some people can't get pregnant. Some people go through stillbirth. Some people, I mean, you could go on and on and on. And saying something like that isn't meant to strike fear into anyone. Trying to view this as like an unbiased thing. It's just a fact, I think, that it will take you on different paths. There will be curves in the road, and there may be obstacles, and and the second question about what you shouldn't say to someone who's going through something is staying silent and not saying it. There are a lot of people that dropped out of my life completely, because they didn't know what to say, but they chose to not say anything at all. They chose to not even reach out. Mm-hmm. I'm fine if someone were to say, I really don't know what to say. That saying that and being truthful with yourself by saying that sentence is better than just not even opening your mouth at all. And 100%. And just because you're trying to, it's this desperate attempt, this desperate human thing we have of trying to relate to someone. How do you relate to somebody when you've never been through that? The way that you can relate is just by trying to be there for them, and yeah, you might say the wrong thing. And if you catch yourself saying the wrong thing, then apologize. I mean, because it's hard, it's hard to say the right thing. That may not happen. And yeah, bringing religion into it, that's a whole other thing. But if you're, talking with somebody that there's any question of whether they are religious or not, probably best to not talk about God.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if they are, it's like, that's dangerous territory for me. I was like, just avoid it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like you said, it changes everything about you. I know people that were very religious going into, a pregnancy loss and came out the other end, with completely different views. So,
yeah.
It was never part of anyone's plan. Let's just put that on the do not ever say list.
I love it. Everything happens, period.
Yeah. And it's like, I still grapple with, let's call them the powers that be, the forces, nature and all that, the things that are bigger than I grapple with that, the notion of chaos, and that, there are many days where I live in fear of something bad happening again. And that's a very real thing. And I have to stop myself and remember where that's coming from. That this is because of trauma. This is a trauma response. Hypervigilance is a trauma response. Mm. And so if you can recognize that and catch yourself in it, it makes a little bit more sense, you know, as opposed to like a panic attack that comes literally out of nowhere. When you can't relate it to some experience. So, and there are times where Abby and I had this conversation a bunch where we're like, would this have been easier if we were religious? Like, would we have been able to get through this more if we believed in God? Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure there's an answer to that question, and probably never will be. But yeah, I mean, the important thing is that the support is out there. There are people that have gone through, even though you think that you're the only one that's gone through something. There are people out there that can definitely relate.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Matt, so much for sharing your story and for sharing about Wandering Soul, and for continuing to, help keep this conversation going and help connect people with support. If anybody listening today, this resonates with you, please definitely reach out either to All Paths, or I know, Matt, you said it was okay for people to reach out to you. So, we'll put the Wandering Soul link in the show notes. But if this resonated with you, you are not alone. We're all here for you if you need anything. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was really a very powerful conversation.
We hope you'll join us next time for more family building stories and resources. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts to make sure you never miss an episode. And follow us on social media at allpathsfb, or visit our website, allpathsfb.org, for more information about our work. All Paths Family Building is so grateful to the members of our circle of support who are vital to our ability to provide emotional support, education, and advocacy that is open to anyone struggling to grow their families. Today, we want to send a special thank you to our silver sponsor, Mass General Hospital. Thank you for joining us for this episode. Please help spread the word so that anyone who is struggling to grow their family can join the conversation. It's an honor to walk with you on your family building journey.